Alrighty, it is just past 2 o'clock. We can get started. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nav. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher. If you're in the studio tomorrow, I'll be teaching the heated flow at 10:15. So if you're around for that, I'll see you then. Today's workshop, class, whatever you want to call it, is around an introduction to mindfulness meditation. Show of hands, who here meditates? Show of hands, who here meditates? Great, so about half the room. For those of you that don't, why'd you show up? We want to learn. Okay, so what are you hoping to get out of this?
A nudge toward doing it.
There's no right or wrong answers. Please don't be scared to say anything that's on your mind. What do you think meditation is?
The tool to calm you and center you. It's a skill.
Correct, it is a skill. It can calm you, but it can do other things as well, and we'll talk about some of that other stuff. Creates present moment awareness. For those of you that do meditate, why do you keep meditating? What brings you back to your practice? Yeah?
It's a form of mental discipline.
I agree. It is. You guys come here to the gym to improve your physical health. Yes? You move your body to build up physical fitness, physical health, to strengthen your body. Meditation becomes a discipline for the mind, but it's the opposite way. We can all somewhat understand that if a body does not move, it is an unhealthy body. Things will happen to that body, aches and pains, stiffness, soreness. And so to remedy that, we move the body that does not move, and in return, the body feels good. What is a harder thing for many of us to understand is that the mind is the inverse. The reality for most of you is that from the moment you wake up to the time you go to sleep, your mind is just busy, thinking. And the remedy to all that thinking and moving within the mind is to slow it down and to maybe even stop it. But it's a harder thing to work around because we can't see it the same way that we could see our body if it was becoming out of shape. You could see if you put on a few extra pounds, if you cannot touch your toes, if you can't move as freely as you once did. But the challenge with the mind is we are quicker to just accept whatever is going on up here and think of it as normal. I don't think it's very normal in my opinion. I work with corporate clients and they typically laugh at the joke because there's very much truth to the joke. But I usually joke and I'll say, if you spend all your day writing emails, you're most likely finishing your day with an email. And if that's your day, moment you wake up, you're writing emails, all day you're writing emails, you're finishing your day writing emails, you're most likely going to end up dreaming about emails. And the reality is around that is that we haven't built the skill on one hand, nor do we understand the gravity of what's surrounded with that, but we have difficulty letting our days go. And so we get to the end of our day, we try to go to sleep, and we're like, why can't I go to sleep? It's because the mind's been busy all day, and we haven't even given it the opportunity to rest and recover. And so as much as each day is a brand new day, the reality for many of us is that we bring baggage from yesterday, last week, last month, last year into today. So meditation can become a bit of a discipline to help you lighten the load on your mind. A little bit about me when it comes to the meditation practice. I'm not going to say I've been meditating my whole life because I haven't. I've been meditating for about 4.5, 5 years. First few years was just using like Headspace, Calm app, just different apps because one, I didn't have the resources because we were in the middle of the pandemic. I started in the middle of the pandemic. Thankfully, I was able to find a resource, and luckily for all of you that attend the gym, the resource is only 3 or 4 kilometers away. It's the Buddhist temple just off of Kothra Road. Every week, I think twice a week, Wednesday evenings, Saturday mornings, they hold public open to everybody meditation classes. They're about an hour. The monk there, he'll share a story about the Buddha, and then you'll sit for about half an hour. It's a bit harder because you're not guided as much, but it's still a wonderful resource to have. So throughout the pandemic, we would social distance outside, listen to him talk, and practice on our own. And I worked with that for a very long period of time. And about 2 years ago, after a bit of research, I got intrigued enough to try a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It's known as a Vipassana, Vipassana. A Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. We're also lucky enough, we're fortunate to have a center just south of Barrie in Innisfil. It's free for anybody to attend. You have to apply, you have to register, you have to fill out a little questionnaire. Available to men and women, children as well, although they're put through a little bit less of a strenuous schedule. Day one, when you show up, you hand in your phone within the first 30 to 40 minutes of showing up. That first night that you arrive, you then take a vow of silence. So for 10 days, you're asked to not speak, no reading, no writing, no listening to music, no exercising. There's about 35 other men that are on one half of the center, and then segregated within the middle, there's about 45 women on the other half of the center. Over the course of the 10 days, you wake up every morning around 4:30. There's a big gong that smashes, so you hear that. And every night you go to sleep around 9:30, at least that's when the lights turn off. Throughout the day, you're meditating. If you're fully disciplined and you put in the full amount of effort, you're meditating about 10 or 11 hours a day. But some people can choose to cut it down a little bit less, and bare minimum would be like 4 to 5 hours a day. So it all depends on how much you put into it. That's what you'll get out. When I was speaking about lightening the load on my mind, while you're there at this 10-day silent meditation retreat, you're put on a vegetarian diet. So for some people, that's something that they actually have to prepare themselves for. I met a man who ate a lot of meat, and for 2 months beforehand, he progressively cut down his meat intake so that he could go without meat, something that you have to renunciate. But you're given really good, clean food. It's not always bland. Trust me, food is actually really good. If I could write a Google review, good food would be included on that. You're provided with a bed. Some people choose to sleep in cabins that are outdoors. I made the mistake last year to choose the cabin in the sweltering heat of mid-July. And the ceiling is made of like tin or some form of steel, so it conducts a lot of heat. And within my cabin at midday, it would be 35 degrees. So I'd be in my boxers trying to meditate, and it just wouldn't be working. So it forced me, on a good note, to spend more time in the meditation hall, which had AC, so we were fortunate for that. If it's your very first time going to this retreat, you're permitted to eat 3 times a day. Breakfast is at 6:30 in the morning, lunch is at 11, and then you're given light fruit at about 5 p.m. It was my second time around last year as I went, so I was not permitted fruit, which means I was fasting for about 20 hours a day. Now, reality being, you're fasting for 20 hours a day, you're not eating a whole lot, because you have to understand there's only enough food for the people that are there. So if you're going for seconds, on one hand, you might be taking away food from someone else, and on the second hand, there just may be no more food left for you to take. So you're not doing a whole lot of exercise, you're sitting for about 10 or 11 hours, you're eating really good, clean food. So the very first time that I went, I lost about 7.5 pounds. Now, understanding that most of that weight is gonna come back. You go back to your lifestyle where you eat more food, where you move a bit more, you're exercising, you're gonna put on that weight, it comes back pretty easily. But honestly, how it felt, and it's a hard thing to explain and to put into words, but the best way for me to say it is that the 7 pounds I lost did not feel like they fell off my body. It literally felt like they fell off my mind. I felt 7 pounds mentally lighter to the earth. Now, I could maybe attribute a couple of those pounds to certain things that I had to work through. We hold onto a lot. A lot of baggage carries within the mind. Somebody says something to you, maybe they've said something to you a few weeks ago and you're still thinking about that thing. You have something planned for in the future, and you constantly ruminate over that until that point in time comes. And then, yeah, maybe for me at that point in time, I was working over some anger towards a relationship, towards people, towards this, that, and the other. So I could attribute maybe a couple of those pounds lost to me letting go or to resolving a relationship to one of those few things. A lot of the weight that I might have lost off my mind was unconscious stuff. Things that we don't even realize that we're holding onto until we're forced to confront ourselves in a really interesting way. So my hope is today to kind of explain meditation as a tool, which somebody mentioned, an experience, and as a practice. I can talk about meditation for hours, and the challenge with many of us is that we can intellectually understand what I'm saying. You might even be able to know of people in your life that meditate, and there was a time before they meditated in which they were a certain way, and after maybe a consistent meditation practice, something within them changed. So you can see the change in another person as well. But until you sit to experience the practice of meditation itself, you do not know what's going on. So the merits of a meditation practice are within the practice itself. The challenge for many of us is that it's a very unknown practice. There was a survey done, and I might get some of the numbers wrong. They surveyed 1,000 people and they asked a very simple question. Would you rather sit for 15 minutes in a room by yourself, alone? No phone, no nothing, just you in a room, 15 minutes, nothing else? Or just receive an electric shock? 2/3 of the people said, give me the electric shock, let me be over and done with. So what that tells me is there's a lot of, like I said, baggage up here, a lot of skeletons up here, a lot of things that we've buried away within our mind, within the unconscious, that we are afraid to face. And so there's a skillful way of approaching this as well. It's not that you sit to meditate and you try to confront all your demons. Good luck. It's not that you try to sit and meditate and stop all your thoughts. Good luck. If you've ever been on a treadmill for a really, really long time, when you step off the treadmill, it's almost like your feet still keep moving a little bit. That's kind of the reality with your mind. For a lot of us, the mind has been moving for years, decades, half our life, our whole life, and we've never once really given it the opportunity to stop. Even while you're sleeping, your mind doesn't stop. That's one thing that we have to understand as well. So when we approach a meditation practice, especially as beginners, it is very challenging. And for some of us, we just don't have the capacity to sit for long periods of time. I'm not going to tell you today to sit with your eyes closed and focus on your breath for an hour straight like I do. Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about meditation. We're going to learn about meditation. And then towards the end, we're going to practice meditation. And if you have questions, that's where the floor will open at the end for us to discuss things. One thing you'll realize is I do go on tangents, so I'm trying my best to stay on track as well. When it comes to the meditation practice, it is a tool. But it is a very interesting tool in that we can meditate for a minute, for 5 minutes, for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, for an hour. And there is a chance of you feeling the same benefit that you feel within 1 minute, within 5 minutes, within 20 minutes. But it takes time for us to build that capacity to do so. The more realistic thing for us to all focus on in this part of the world is to not stop our thoughts, but to slow down our thoughts. Like I said, we're not fortunate enough to be introduced to meditation at an early age. If you are, great. That's one of the best things that you can do for your children. We start later in life, so we've already built up a huge backlog of unconscious baggage that we have to work through. Story to kind of allude to all this There was a story of an English professor who went to India and did a lot of traveling through the Himalayas, which is where a lot of the Buddhist monasteries are. He went to one of these Buddhist monasteries, and within the Buddhist monasteries, they typically take in orphaned children, children that come from very poor families, children that cannot sustain themselves for whatever the reason may be, poverty being one of the main reasons. So this English professor is walking around the school grounds, and he peeks his head in, and he sees what seems to be a child who's about 8 or 9 years old, teaching a bunch of other children something who seem like they're 4 to 5 years old. So a child teaching a child, confusing for the English professor who's educated, has a PhD and all that. Class finishes, all these little kids walk out, little 8-year-olds still there. So the professor comes and he asks the child, what was going on here? And the child goes, oh, today it was these children's first day of school. They were receiving their first lessons. And so he asks, oh, what were they learning? How to count, how to recite the alphabet, things that we typically get taught in kindergarten, stuff like that. And apparently this 8-year-old kid goes, no, sir, they were learning how to breathe. English teacher, perplexed, what do you mean they were learning how to breathe? Maybe the 8-year-old said this, maybe it's just a part of the story, who knows? But he goes, what we're taught here in our Buddhist school is that the breath is the most important thing. Breath is the first thing that enters you when you are born. It is the last thing that leaves you when you pass away. But so few of us have any conscious connection to our breath, any relationship to the breath. So our very first lessons here at school is to learn how to breathe and learn how to be with the breath. And I think that's a really profound thing for an 8-year-old to say. So if he said it, cool. The kid maybe wasn't 8, who knows? I don't care. But I think there's a very valuable lesson there. Many of us, we do 2 things that are extremely bad habits, but we don't even realize that we do them. One is that we breathe out of our mouth. Mouth is meant for eating, nose is meant for breathing. Unless you're clogged up, and it's a horrible time of year because for some of us, our sinuses get flared up from the allergies. But nose is meant for breathing. Mouth is meant for eating. Many of us, when we start to feel stressed, panicked, when the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, the mouth breathing becomes your default mode of inhaling and exhaling. And the challenging part of mouth breathing is that it is putting you into sympathetic nervous system arousal. If you're unfamiliar with what that word means, you've probably heard of your fight or flight. Freeze, fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. I think that's in there as well. Your sympathetic nervous system is your body's signaling that you're in danger of some sort, that you have to be on guard, that you have to be on high alert. Without even realizing it, some of us are in high alert from the moment we wake up to the time we go to sleep, and then we wonder why we're feeling burnt out and stressed out. It's because unknowingly we're stressing out our body and mind just by having a mouth that is open as we breathe. So that's one thing that we can all try to improve on. This has nothing to do once we get into the meditation practice. It's just daily life. We try our best to breathe through our nose. Second thing is that we breathe very shallow. Most individuals breathe towards the upper chest. Breathing up towards the upper chest limits the full capacity of your lungs, weakens your diaphragm, which is the muscle responsible for breath. Your lungs are the organs responsible for breathing. Your diaphragm is this parachute-shaped muscle that separates your rib cage from your abdominal organs. It is a muscle that can be trained. So we have the ability to strengthen our breath, our belly breathing, if we focus a bit more mindfully on breathing into our diaphragm. These are 2 things that will just change how you feel from day to day. Whether you meditate or not, it's about bringing your body into a bit of homeostasis. So as a tool, meditation can help us notice some of these things. And the hope is that we use the tool to bring ourselves into harmony physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Next, it's a practice. It's a practice that's very hard, and it's a practice that can be easily put off to the side. Especially as beginners, like I said, some of us only have the capacity to sit still for a few minutes at a time with our eyes closed. For some of us, 5 minutes, for others, 10. Others can build up to 15, 20. The challenge also being that we live busy lives. Some of us might be parents, and it's hard to sometimes close your eyes for 20 minutes if there's screaming kids in the house, if there's other distractions that are pulling you away. And so as much as the hope would be that you could sit maybe twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, some of us, we just rush through our mornings. From the moment we get up, we try to always push the snooze until we can't go any further. And then it's just rush, rush, rush out the door. And if you're rushing out the door, you're going to be rushing through the rest of your day. It's really hard to slow down if we begin our day by speeding up. So what I sometimes recommend as a quick tip to build structure into your life, if you cannot meditate for, say, a 10 or 20-minute window in the morning, is to break it up into smaller meditations throughout the day. And there was an experiment done within one of the hospitals in the States, and this is an experiment from the 90s. In the hospital environment, good luck trying to find 20 minutes of peace and quiet while you're on your shift. So what they did, they experimented with every hour on the hour, a bell would go off on the PA system. Bell would go off on the PA system. All the nurses, all the doctors would stop what they were doing, freeze, close their eyes, take 5 deep breaths, and then continue on with their day, continue on with the next hour. And in that sense, for them, it was a much more applicable practice because of the busyness of their lifestyle in that environment. They weren't going to be able to find 10, 20, 30 minutes of peace and quiet. So 5 breaths is what I'm saying. For some of you, maybe more than enough to figure out what it feels like to slow down, to quiet down, and then to move into the next hour with a bit of a cleaner slate. And then when it comes to the experience side of meditation, this is where it will vary from person to person. Some of us will have positive experiences. Some of us will have harder to work with experiences. It is not always going to be sunshines and rainbows when you sit to meditate, although that would be ideal. At a certain point in time, you're going to have to work with some of that baggage that's in your mind, some of the skeletons in your closet, some of those things that you've buried away that you haven't checked in on a while. And so as much as sometimes meditation is that very relaxing experience, my opinion is that that relaxation is very surface level. You can clip a weed at the top, but if the roots remain, the weed will grow back. When it comes to meditation, some of the deeper elements of what we would hope to achieve later in life with this practice, we have to go down to the weeds. We have to go down to the weeds, we have to tend to our soil, and if we can do that, maybe flowers will bloom in our garden. But for many of us, when we begin meditation, there are a lot of weeds in the mind. And we have to take the time to create the space, to create the conditions for peace to arise, for softness to come in, for stillness to come in, for silence to come in. So in this initial first few things that I've said, are there any questions? Anything that I can clarify, anything that I can mention, add on to? Okay, great. There are several styles of meditation. Today, I just wish to focus on the active mindfulness meditation. I'll talk to Chelsea. We'll probably try to do a few different styles. I would like to, down the line, introduce a body scan meditation, which I think is a very beneficial meditation practice. Mantra meditations are a different style. There are certain visualization, contemplation meditations, and these all attempt to work with the mind in different ways. It's not that we literally store trauma in our bodies, but our bodies remember. They remember what's happened to us. And there are certain meditation techniques that allow us to build a more healthier relationship to our bodies, and in return, a healthier relationship to our minds. I can introduce a little bit if we have time. I just want to stick with mindfulness meditation, but the idea being would say a body scan meditation. Has anybody ever practiced one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. A handful of people. For many of us, we have areas of our body that give us daily trouble. And for some of us, it may be due to chronic pain. For others, it could be injuries. For some of us, it just is stiffness and soreness from daily life. In the West, body scans were introduced in the medical setting by introducing them to cancer patients. And there's a theory around the body scan meditation that healing comes from within. So even if the unfortunate reality for this individual is that they have a terminal illness, it does not mean that they cannot heal. And a lot of the healing comes from reframing your relationship to your experience. So if we think about cancer, we don't have to, but that's just the example I'm going to use. Cancer impacts the whole body for some people. They go through chemo, they go through radiation, they go through hell, and they have no promise that they'll come out the other side. They still go through it willingly because they might not have any other option. But as a result of this, the body takes a big hit. A lot of fatigue, a lot of symptoms, a lot of side effects. And so what they did was they tried to introduce individuals to this body scan meditation to help them build a more positive relationship to their circumstances, to their body, to their pain. And what they realized was prolonged exposure to this body scan practice helped them to actually get through chemo with more positive outcomes because they weren't dreading it as much. There wasn't as much resistance to the experience, but there was a sense of openness, a sense of surrender to the experience. And that's one extreme example. For others, it's just that you wake up with, say, a lower back flare-up. Your back hurts, your shoulders hurt, and then the rest of the day, you're just gonna complain about it. My back hurts, my back hurts, my back hurts. But at no point do then you take an opportunity to sit with that discomfort, because that is uncomfortable. There's some intense yoga classes where, you end up holding a posture for a very long time and your legs are shaking and you're quivering and you're like, why the heck did I come here? And so it's about being able to understand that what it is that you're feeling, when we feel it in the moment, we think that it's gonna last forever. And your mind tries to play tricks on you. Very primitively, it's that fight or flight that kicks in. When we feel discomfort, when we feel stressed, when we feel challenged, there are signals that go from mind into body that try to trick you into believing that you are dying. So you have one of two options, fight or flight. Run away from what you're feeling and bury, or to face what you're feeling and to see what happens. Facing what you feel isn't always the greatest experience. You wouldn't expect it, but people cry when they meditate because they're facing something that they haven't faced in a really long time. They're bringing up to the surface something that's been needing to breathe within them for years, but something that they've repressed and buried away. Men, we do a great job at repressing our emotional side of life. Meditation, I believe, is a great tool to learn to tap into some of your emotions. Funny enough, I was introduced to meditation by one of my close friends who's an MMA fighter, mixed martial arts fighter. He punches people in the face and kicks them in the head for a living. He's really good at it, but he was the one that introduced me to meditation. And I go, you do this with your life, but you meditate, why? To deal with my anger. But you're supposed to be a bit angry, aren't you, when you fight? No. You don't want to let your emotional side lead on with things. So for him, meditation was a tool that he used to create space around his anger so that he can approach his craft, his job, his occupation with a bit more discipline. We probably know of people in our life that we label as just being that way. You have that uncle, you have that neighbor who's just that angry person. Oh, that's just Joe. That's just the way he is. But the reality is that's not the way he is. That's the way he became to be. And it's the same with all of us. There are certain habits that we've formed with who we are today But for many of us, these habits may have been created years and years and years ago. One traumatic experience as a child that you don't even remember at this point in life has caused you to react to certain situations in your life in a very conditioned way. And once again, this tool of meditation, I'm trying to paint the picture of all these things that this tool can do by helping you to observe. Observation is the main key of meditation. You're not trying to change anything when you meditate. You're just trying to notice what is happening in the moment. And by observing things with a clear mind, with an open mind, with a mind that does not judge what is being felt as right or wrong, good or bad, just simply is, you can then gain the wisdom to then change your action, to change your choice of action when you then confront that situation again in your later life. A really wonderful spiritual quote that kind of alludes to this is, if you think you're doing very well on your spiritual path, go spend a weekend with your family. Reason being, your family members probably know all the little triggers. Whether they've done it intentionally or not, they have things that they do, things that they say, that uncle that's just the way that he is, that triggers you. And there's nothing wrong with being triggered. One of the things that we're taught, there's 3 layers of action that can manifest from something being felt. If someone does me wrong, someone says something bad about me, calls me a bad name, makes fun of me, whatever it is, I will absorb it. When I absorb it, most likely a thought is going to come up first. That person said such and such to me. I didn't like it. And already as the thought's forming, as I'm saying these words aloud, this would be your thought, your verbal way of speaking to yourself. So-and-so said this, I don't like this. Now you have a choice of working with the thought, but for many of us, because we're very reactive, thought comes out into words. So then you reciprocate negativity with negativity. Someone called you a bad name, you respond back to them in a bad name. Think about when you drive and someone cuts you off in traffic. Beep, the beep comes out of your mouth because you're swearing. And then the ultimate extent of that negative action is with your physical body, to act out in a negative way. So extreme example, thoughts about harming, hurting someone, to then going one step higher, to then start to articulate words of hate, are going higher, to then committing actions of harm and hate. So we have to understand that there's several different layers of life and experience and action that we can work with. If you are someone that has anger issues, there's no guarantee that in one meditation sitting that your anger disappears. If it does, great, but probably not. How you can think of it, most people, let's just say somebody said something to me, I start to get angry. And you can probably all think of one point in your life, a time in your life where in the course of a 5-second window, a 10-second window, somebody said something to you that hurt you. They might have done it unintentionally. It's just how they are. They say this negative thing, this negative experience happens, and this person that said this to you goes on with the rest of their day as if nothing happened. But you, as the victim, as the one who has received that negativity, will then be sitting with it, holding on to it because it was directed at you. Now, it's not to say that you shouldn't notice what was said to you. Something negative was said to you, yes. But then for the next 24 hours, you're just simmering. You're simmering. Whether you then confront that person or not, more likely than not, what happens is that the wrong person ends up on the receiving end of you receiving hate. A boyfriend, a girlfriend ends up on the receiving end of just you being very tense, agitated, angry, because someone said something to you, someone did something to you. And so this is you in the world before meditation. It takes you a full 24 hours to go from being boiling hot with seething anger to eventually cooling down. And then you meditate, you build this practice, you start to become disciplined, you notice that anger comes up within you from time to time, but still, you're still an angry person, but less so. Same person you meet, they say something to you again. And this time around, it's not a full 24 hours. Maybe the next time around is 12 hours. Still angry, but now half the time spent draining your energy towards anger. Keep meditating, you keep working with anger, and then again, something happens. 12 hours might go down to 8, might come down to 4, might come down to 2, till hopefully you reach a point in time, happens sometimes, doesn't happen all the time, some triggers are stronger than others, that you can notice the anger as it comes into the body. In therapy, in psychotherapy, the term is known as the tonality of feeling. If you've ever gone to a psychotherapist, you've ever done talk therapy, sometimes you'll be asked a question. When you tell them that you feel a certain way, the response will be, where do you feel it? And for some people, certain emotions surface in certain areas of the body in certain ways. Anger comes with a lot of heat usually, and it might come in the chest. Warm chest, the heart starts to beat faster, the breath starts to get harder, the muscles start to tense up. So you can notice this happening if you're able to understand that this is how your body processes anger. For others, it might be sadness, sorrow, and the body gets very heavy, feels very sluggish. The breath is very damp, it's very heavy. World seems very difficult. And then there's other emotional landscapes that you can work with. Anxiety, sometimes very racing thoughts, the eyes are moving a lot, but everybody is slightly different. And the hope would be that in that moment where somebody says something negative to you, that instead of you going down the whole 24 hours, because you realize after a certain point in time that it gets you nowhere. Being angry and holding on to anger doesn't get you anywhere. So when that person tries to give you that gift of negative energy, you say no thank you. Instead of receiving that negativity, holding on to that negativity, sharing that negativity with people that didn't want it, you just say no thank you. And what that might look like is when you sit at your family dinner at Christmas and you're meeting that uncle again who's just the way he is, instead of being triggered in a certain way. And the hard part is when you do try to let go, create distance, a part of you wants them to realize that what they're doing isn't right. And you can always let that person know this is how it's made you feel. But if they change, they change. If they don't change, they don't change. That isn't up to you. All you can control is yourself. As corny and cliche as it is, all change starts from within. And if you're able to demonstrate that change within you, maybe that would be the force to get someone to change within themselves, but it's very difficult for you to try to change someone else. The problem that you think is the problem is not the real problem. It is your relationship to the problem that is the real problem. So a lot of this meditation practice, whether your eyes are closed, they're open, whether you're walking as a meditation practice, whether you're sitting, whether you're just working with your breath, whether you're working with your body, it's all about relationship. It's our ability to build a more positive relationship to the mind, to the body, to the breath. It's a very abstract question and there's no right or wrong answer. And maybe you just think about it for the remainder of this session. What is your belief about your breath? And it's just like I said, because we breathe so unconsciously, it's not something we always consider. And I've had to do some thinking, and sometimes the answer changes, but I feel my belief is that my breath is my spiritual connection to life and living itself. That without this connection to breath, I am just a body that moves and I am just a mind that thinks. But when I can bring my breath into the present moment, when I can connect more deeply with my breath, I have created a bridge, a spiritual bridge between my physical side and my mental side to be a bit more grounded in this present moment. For you, maybe something different. For you, this just may have been a new perspective to consider. But that's something that I want you to kind of consider the next time you do get angry, to notice what happens to your breath. When you get sad, notice what happens to your breath. When you get excited, notice what happens to your breath. Your breath is influenced with every single experience that you experience as a person, but it's just that we don't pay attention to it. And so that's one thing I would love for you to take away from this, is to notice that the breath is so important to your daily life. But because you don't have to tell yourself how to breathe, you don't wake up in the morning. Imagine that, waking up every morning and then trying to turn on every single bodily function. Okay, heart, start beating. Okay, lungs, start breathing. Okay, stomach, start turning. No, you'd be in bed all day. You'd be in bed and then you'd go back to sleep. The body has its very unique way of functioning. All it wants from us is to listen to it from time to time. Once again, any questions as we continue on from what I've said so far? Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the practice of meditation itself. As I said, seated on the ground for some of us is hard. Being cross-legged for some of us with tight hips, very hard. I've worked with individuals, some athletes that are up here. I ask them to sit cross-legged and they're like, I am. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you're not just holding your leg? No, I'm sitting cross-legged. Okay, what the heck's going on here? So the reality is, for some of us, this is already a hard part of the practice. So we're with you in your personal life, you might choose to sit in a chair. Once again, meditating laying down requires a lot more discipline, a lot more focus, not discouraging it. I'm just asking you to notice if you do choose to meditate, because it's deceptive. You're like, oh, I was so relaxed. I must have been meditating. No, you were sleeping. You were sleeping. As much as the body can become relaxed, as much as the mind can become calm, our awareness must be sharp like a steak knife. Steak knives are sharp, yeah? Yeah. Not a butter knife, steak knife. And that's the challenge. When we lie down, our body is so accustomed to it that we've associated going horizontal with falling asleep. So there's a constant push and pull between you trying your best to stay alert and awake to your body saying, but we're so relaxed, we're so calm. Drowsiness is good. Sleeping is good. And so I encourage a lot of people that that start to meditate to start by being seated, to build this connection to breath from a seated position, and then down the line, you try to work on your back. Certain meditations like the body scan is better done on your back, but the benefit of the body scan is that it's typically a guided meditation. So I would be guiding you from start to finish, and the hope is that you listening to my voice in a guided body scan would allow you to not become drowsy because your mind is anchored to the instructions of the practice. In mindfulness meditation, in a seated meditation, there is a lot of discipline that is required, a lot of determination that you do not fall into that drowsiness. So I like to stress a lot on posture. When it comes to the lower body, you always have options. As mentioned, you can sit in a chair, you can sit cross-legged. Some of us will have a leg extended. Some of us will have blocks or bolsters underneath the knees. I am not that formal or hard on the legs being in different positions. Some places that you go to, you cannot have your feet facing towards the teacher. It is apparently a sign of disrespect. I don't care. Other things. Next thing would be your arms, your hands. If you are of the type of person that has mantras or mudras, within your practice, that is things that you could bring in. Common mudra would be just the index and thumb coming together. If you believe in it, cool. If not, once again, doesn't matter. Hands can just simply rest on your legs. Hands can rest in your lap. We just want this area of the body to be relatively relaxed. During my 10-day silent meditation retreat, we get to a point in time after the 4th day where we're asked something very specific. That for the hour that we all sit together, there are 3 times a day when men and women all come together. That for the hour that you're sitting, that you do not open your eyes, you do not open your arms, you do not open your legs. That you sit like a stone-cold Buddha for the hour that you're there. Most of us will end up fidgeting. That's normal. Idea and hope would be is that, say today, I'm sitting to meditate, and over the course of the 20 minutes, I have to readjust my posture 5 or 6 times. Then my hope would be the next time around, I can go from maybe 5 or 6 to maybe 4 or 5 to 2 or 3. Some days will vary. Some days will be a lot more, some days will be a lot less. But what the idea with that is, it's not that your body wants to move, it's that your mind is the one controlling the body to move. Case in point, if you've ever slept outdoors in the summer, or if there's ever somehow been a mosquito in your room indoors, if you are in deep sleep, you have no idea what's going on in the world around you. If a mosquito lands on your arm and starts to go on your arm to suck blood, whether you know it or not, a reaction that may happen is that the arm swats. You didn't wake up to see the mosquito to swat your arm, but there is a reaction that is controlled by the mind that is still somewhat awake. It would be your subconscious that feels something happening and reacts by sending a signal to the body to get that disturbance away. Simpler example, how you go to sleep is probably not how you wake up. Some of us start sleeping on our backs, and next thing you know, we're sleeping on our sides. We start off on one edge of the bed, we end up on the other edge of the bed. The body constantly moves, but a lot of that movement is driven from the mind. So even though you're putting yourself in the most comfortable position to start, there will probably be a thought that comes to mind of, I feel an ache. Why am I feeling an ache now? How much longer am I going to feel this ache? Okay, maybe I just move. He's not going to see. And all these thoughts, they just play into the game of strengthening that habit pattern of reacting. Over time, and this was for me as well, the very first time that I went to this silent meditation retreat, when we were asked to sit still, to not move, I was still very fidgety, but I was able to get to a point where within an hour of a seated meditation, I did not budge. Not easy to do. It's not to say that the aches disappear. It's once again about that relationship to the ache. There are 3 tenets within Buddhist practice, and they still all are true within the meditation. Anicca, anatta, and dukkha. Anicca is translated as impermanence. Whatever you feel, no matter how intense it is, cannot last forever. So it comes up like a wave. This ache that came out of supposedly nowhere will come up. It will stay for some time, and it will fade away. And as much as I'm speaking about an ache, the same can be said about that anger, that emotional experience, a physical experience, another type of experience. So impermanence. Understanding impermanence allows me to create a buffer away from what I'm feeling because I know that no matter how intense, how uncomfortable, how quote unquote painful it might be, I can understand that what I'm feeling is bound to change. So instead of forcing change, I surrender myself and just accept that change is going to come. Whether I force it or not, I just wait and see what happens. So that first tenet, impermanence. Second tenet, anatta. Anatta is the concept of non-self. For some of us, this is a bit of a tricky one to absorb. We most readily identify ourselves with our body. It's our meat suit. It's the vehicle that we've been given in this incarnation to live out our existence. But we are not our body. To some degree, we are parts of the body, but the body is not all of us. There is something deeper within, and the hope is with meditation, you're able to connect to something deeper, but we are not our body. And you can break it down in ways that confuse the mind. So if I were to say, for example, what part of your body is you? Somebody might end up saying this part. Okay, this part is what? This part is your chest, it's your torso. But the torso is just a sum of parts. Torso is made up of front side, of back side, of the rib cage, of all this. Let me just use another example, arm. Arm is made up of muscles, bicep, tricep, forearms, extensors, pronators. It's made up of bones, the humerus, the upper arm bone, the forearm, the wrist. And I can keep trying to zoom in. Okay, if I'm not my arm, maybe I'm my hand. Okay, my hand is my palm, it's my fingers. I can go zoom in deeper. Okay, maybe I'm my digit. I'm this one finger here. And if I were to keep zooming in, scientifically, you're nothing but just electrons, protons, neutrons, all this movement of energy that at a microscopic level doesn't stop moving. Apparently, the Buddha was able to discover this realization thousands of years ago. Scientists in the West have only been able to do it in the last couple of hundred. So it's about understanding that as much as we take things personally, you can use the emotional example as an idea again. When anger comes up, common thing that we'll say is, I am angry. Okay, which part of you is angry? If you are the one that is angry, which part of you is the one that is angry? And it's kind of an abstract question because it will stump you because you can't really point to anger. Which part of you is angry? Hard to tell. But as I said before, anger is an experience that is accompanied with sensations. So anger surfaces in the form of heat, of tension, of tightness, of that hard breathing, and we can start to notice that. And if we can work with the feeling of anger, then it's not that you are the one that is angry. Anger has come up and it is present within your being, within your body. And if you can work with the concept of taking things not so personally, then you can also understand that you can create space once again from the experience. Once again, a bit abstract, so if you need me to touch upon it later, I can try to do so. Last tenet is dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, pain. It is just one of the inevitable facts of life that things will happen in your life that you don't want happening, and things that you would want happening in your life do not happen. And that in return creates suffering for us. We crave things that feel good. We avert from things that feel bad. And our life is just built on going for pleasurable experiences and pushing away unpleasurable experiences. And so if we come back to sitting in silence and I start to feel my back ache, because of my relationship to my aching back, because I don't have that groundedness, I associate that as an unpleasurable experience. So I want that experience to end, so I start to crave for something more pleasurable. And usually that craving is you then fidgeting. You fidget, so then you feel good for a few extra minutes. And then you go back to closing your eyes, you go back to sitting to meditate. And now for some reason, it's not your back, it's your shoulder. So you're like, oh, damn, I thought I was good. Okay, so then you shimmy your shoulder. Physically, you're still in that same seated position. It's just different parts of the body are speaking up, and we are unable to hold space for what is being felt. And we constantly try to replace experiences with new ones. And so that's where suffering comes in from a lot of people. I went on a vacation one time with one of my friends. Never been on a vacation with him before, and so I thought it would be okay. And I guess we're just two different types of people. And so one morning we woke up and we were in Vancouver. And before we got out of bed, he had planned like 8 things for the day. But I go, Steve, we can do these things, but how about you just start by getting out of bed and we'll see what happens. Maybe we get these 8 things checked off, but maybe we don't. And he's like, oh, okay. And then we did the first thing, and before we even finished the first thing, which I believe, or maybe it was second or third thing, it was a hike. But before we even finished the hike, he was ready to start planning all the next stuff in the day. And I go, Steve, you're gonna finish this trip and you're not gonna have enjoyed any of it because you were never satisfied with what you were doing. Before you finished one thing, you always moved on to the next. It was kind of like, a wake-up call for him. And I didn't mean to say it in like a negative way, but it's just true from a lot of people. We experience one thing, it's enjoyable, and immediately we want more, more, more. We want to try to cram our days with as much as we can do, but then we don't end up appreciating all that we are doing. We are never satisfied with having enough. We typically want more. And once again, that creates suffering. It creates this negative spiral of you wanting more or averting yourself from things that don't feel like they're enough. And it's a bottomless hole. It's, in the Buddhist terms, it's known as living in the realm of hungry ghosts, where the stomach is a bottomless pit, but the mouth is the size of a pinhole. So your appetite will never be satisfied by what you consume because you can never consume enough to please your appetite. And so when it comes to meditation, we have to learn to generate contentment, to be okay with just being here. We want fast fixes in life. We want to experience bliss sooner than later. In the Buddhist tradition, they say that once you start to walk on the path of spirituality, of mindfulness, of meditation, of that path towards enlightenment, try not to rush to get to the final goal. It will still take you 7 lifetimes before you get there. So it's not to say that you can't experience the benefit here and now, but it's about helping you to understand that every step that you take, if that step is taken on the path, if you are walking forward on the path, there is every possibility for you to take that next step in the right direction. So progress is slow, but progress is there. Benefits can be achieved. It just depends on how much we're willing to pursue this practice. Now, before we get into today's meditation, I know staying seated for this long has been challenging for some of us, so thank you. We can give ourselves a minute or a couple of minutes. If anybody wishes to use the bathroom, go ahead. If you want to shake out your legs, go ahead. We'll then get started. How about this? 5 minutes. We'll come back. We can then all practice our meditation. If you need to move your body, please do so. If anybody has any questions in the meantime, feel free to come up.